High Performance Vet Pro Radio. Welcome to High Performance Vet Pro Radio. Here, you will learn everything you need to know to become a high-performance veterinary professional. We will focus on optimizing your sleep, fitness, nutrition, mental performance, stress response, and work-life balance. Please enjoy these professional interviews with cutting-edge content from Dr. Jennifer Quammen and human performance coach Ryan Smith from hyperfliving.com.
And welcome back to High Performance Vet Pro Radio. This is your host, Ryan Smith, with High Performance Living. Today's guest is a veterinary professional who was somebody I would consider as a high-performance veterinarian. And it's not that he works every day as a veterinarian, because he's actually left private practice, but he works a lot with helping veterinary professionals be higher performers. So today I have Dr. Jeff Thoren, and Dr. Jeff Thoren he's founded Gifted Leaders, which is an organization based on leadership coaching. It deals with team culture, kind of helping people think through a lot of things. He also has an individual coaching business that goes along with that. So Dr. Thoren, Jeff, welcome. I appreciate you being here. I could probably go on and on about all the different things, but we'll kind of find out a little bit about you with that. So
sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. So I first met you just a few weeks ago at the Veterinary Leadership Conference up in Chicago. Had a great time, and you were talking about coaching as well as with teams that were there, and it was great hearing you, and a lot of the things that we do kind of meshes over with what you do as well. But I first became familiar with you through Dr. Quammen, Jennifer Quammen, my partner. So as somebody who goes to the VLE and who has been a participant and a facilitator there, she's pretty familiar with you and has been interacting with you for a while. So it's pretty cool to get to know you now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really wanted to kind of go down this path of coaching, since we kind of have an aspect of what we call high-performance coaching. It's about sleep and nutrition and stress management and a lot of different things there, where you had to come at it from some of those same lines, but also more as a leadership coach. So what kind of took you down that path of leadership coaching after becoming a veterinary professional?
Oh, wow. How much time do you have? I'll try to do the Reader's Digest version. I think, Ryan, it kind of came down to an important thing for me was to find the right place where, I could really feel like I was able to use my strengths and talents. And so, after a cameo in private practice, I, spent some time in industry and got some training, and all along the way, I became more interested in the kind of the team and the leadership aspects of groups, either companies part of or practices that I might have been involved in, providing some kind of technical support to. Certainly a lot of the internal dynamics that I noticed both, again, in companies I worked in, as well as walking into different veterinary practices. You just got a sense that some teams were strong and there was a real positive vibe, and some were struggling and there was more of a negative vibe. And so I got really curious about, what's the difference, and
right.
With getting, zeroing in on leadership and the importance of that, and how does an individual or a team kind of create one of those high performance environments that people enjoy coming to work every day and look forward to it versus dreading it, which unfortunately is a lot more common than I think we'd like to see. But so that's what really got me excited about kind of moving in that direction of coaching. I actually started my own business, was doing some Myers-Briggs team development or team building training, and learned about this idea of coaching. Stumbled on a program that's offered here locally in the Phoenix area, and went to the first week of coach training and realized that there was a great fit there. The idea of of coaching skills and leadership skills is pretty synonymous, and I think it's becoming even more important in today's world. All the changes and generational shifts and economic pressures and everything that coaching, those coaching skills and being a coach-like leader kind of really are crucial.
Right. So how does, so I would really consider most veterinary professionals leaders just by the fact that they've gone through a really, really challenging entry level to get into school itself. And obviously it's gotten even more competitive to get into school. So I would actually consider them, just by, the thought process of becoming a veterinarian, you have to be kind of a leadership based. Although I don't think a lot of these really think about becoming a leader, right?
Right. Well, I would agree. I mean, if you're talking about ambition and high achieving natures, then yes, veterinary professionals definitely fall in that category of people that are going to step out and they're going to go out. They're going to have a goal and they're going to.
Right. So you've kind of taken this concept then with this leadership, and you've gone through the International Coach Federation. I know you've gone through the Adler School of Professional Coaching. So you've really kind of gone through this, in-depth change from being a veterinarian to a coach. Mm-hmm. So how do you think the two kind of relate, and how do you see potentially, I know one of the things that's going to be coming up is a lot of veterinary professionals are struggling with, hey, do I want to be in practice for the rest of my life? And how do you see them maybe making that transition into something where they can still have an impact on their industry through something like coaching?
Yeah. Well, I'll back up to, you were talking about the high achievers and getting degrees and, a pretty challenging curriculum and program coming out, perhaps working as associate, getting into that owner role. I think that because of, as technical professionals, because of our drive and our ambition to be the best, sometimes I think that can kind of get in the way when it comes to, okay, now, I'm a partner in the practice and I'm expected to, I guess all along, even if you're an associate, by virtue of that position, you're expected to lead and influence, but mm-hmm. I think sometimes people, especially when they get in that ownership role, that they kind of still are stuck in that place where it's like, the buck stops with me. I'm the boss now. I've got to have all the answers. I got to make all the decisions, and that can actually, I think, be a source of burnout for people because they're putting so much pressure on themselves because they're operating from that old paradigm of heroic leadership,
right?
Which is very, very ingrained in the profession when you think about, just the academic structure that we come through, and the move towards specialization, where people become experts in those areas, and we look up to those experts, and so we expect ourselves to be experts when it comes to leadership, and that's not where a lot of us have been trained.
Right, and also most of them have not received a lot of business education as well. They don't know how to run a business. They purchase a practice or they become a partner in a practice, but they really don't have the business background and know how to be a business. They know how to be a veterinarian, right?
Right. And there is some learning and some additional information that's important. I think, though, that one of the biggest learning I had from transitioning from being a technical professional to being a coach was this idea of not having to have all the answers. Mm-hmm. I know that in coaching, some of the practice owners that I've worked with, that's kind of where they're at, is that, and it's almost freeing because when they can become comfortable and accept the fact that they don't have to have all the answers, and they can go to their team and say, I need some help here. We need to figure this out together. Not necessarily I need some help, but right. We need to figure this out together. Or if they can, use those coach-like skills to really draw from the strengths of the people that are already in the practice. Sometimes that takes a lot of pressure off, and there's lo and behold, there's people in the practice that have expertise you need at the right time. And of course, if you don't have the expertise, then then that means someone's going to have to go learn that, or you're going to have to bring someone else in that can assist, a consultant or another employee or something like that. But
right.
A lot of times, I think that's a big shift, is kind of getting away from I'm the boss, so I have to have all the answers to, I don't really know what to do here, so let's kind of go to the team and ask them for their input, and then it's the operative word is together, right? I think it's that idea of leadership is something that's done together versus something that I, as the boss, I'm the practice owner, so it's all, I have to pull the right lever at the right time. So
right.
I think that can be a huge shift, and certainly, the work that you do is all about that balance idea, and I think that mindset shift of it's not all about me or the couple of us that are partners in the practice. We need to rely more on our team.
Right. And I guess it's really kind of that concept of what culture have you established within your practice too, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can have that culture of, I am the boss and what I say goes, or you can have, in which that's whenever you get a lot of that, little infighting and things like that are kind of the behind the scenes stuff that the practice owner doesn't really see. Or do you have a culture where everybody truly feels like a family and everybody can work together and they know who has the strengths to do what, and they all work together to improve the practice?
Yeah, and that takes work. That oftentimes we start with the first kind of culture, which is more that paternalistic, father or mother knows best.
Right.
Just because that's the paradigm that we've all grown up with. And making the shift to more of a distributed leadership culture, where leadership is a function of the system, not necessarily something that resides in one or two people, does take some work. And people that have been in that system are used to following orders. Sometimes it takes a little time for them to go, there's something's different.
Right.
I can, the messenger won't get shot if I offer up an idea, or, I'm expected to take initiative, or, be accountable for the success of the practice. It's not just the boss that has to worry about that stuff.
Yeah. So let's kind of go down that road then. So if you've got somebody who's been in that more paternal or maternalistic type of practice, how do they start making that change? So if you've got things where maybe you've lost a veterinarian, or there's changes that are going on and lots of things, and there's a big upheaval within your practice, how do you start going from the old way of thinking into a new way of thinking and start really developing that culture?
Yeah. And that's a great question, because I think it's going to be different for different people, but it does start with a mindset to really become clear on the mindset that you're choosing. Mm-hmm. And kind of understanding that there's a difference between the top-down style of leadership and more of a distributed style of leadership. Getting there, of course, is a challenge, because there aren't a heck of a lot of role models.
Right.
So, but again, the starting point would be, how is this working for me? It would be, the Dr. Phil question. How's that working for you?
Yeah.
And probably along with that would be some kind of work around, okay, whatever it is you're experiencing now may not be bad, but it may not be optimal, and you may have a sense that it could be better if you were able to bring out the best in everyone on the team and create more of this idea of collective leadership.
Right.
Then along with that is kind of probably some individual work on what is it that I want to create for myself and for my practice. So it kind of starts inside, and then probably then translates into some kind of an external scanning. Okay, do I have the right people on the team that can make this transition? How do I communicate that there's a shift, that I want to do things differently? Who are some like-minded people within the practice that I could start to meet with, and we can come up with a plan for making the transition together. I think a key part of this is to do it, not do it by yourself, but try to collaborate with other people that are kind of wanting to make that same shift.
Right. And I think part of it too is with us as coaches, we look outside of the industry and how can we pull things in from lots of other places. And I think one of the things they may do is they're like, I'm a veterinarian, I have to stay within the veterinary mindset. And we can go, and some of the things that you were talking about kind of, to me, goes down that pathway of Simon Sinek, and it starts with why, or why leaders eat last, and we're really, hey, what is our mission? What is it we're really trying to do? What is our why? And then let's build the business from there.
I absolutely. In fact, I was thinking of that whole start with why thing as I was talking there. But that would be awesome work to do. Not just individually, but with the practice team, to get really clear on what is it. What would get us totally psyched to get out of bed and come to work every day. And you're not going to maintain that every single day with the ups and downs and kind of the emotional highs and lows, but overall, what is it that really brings everyone together, and what is that core purpose that we can all rally around and remind each other of? So, and that work often isn't done. It's really my experience in going into different practices is oftentimes it's the whiteboard with the boxes on it, and the goal is to check off all the boxes by the end of the day,
right?
Or by some reasonable hour, right?
Right. So I guess that, this would be a great way to start building that culture, though, how do you get that input of all of your other people? And I was actually listening to an interview the other day with Tony Hsu of Zappos, mm-hmm. and listening to where they have their list of, I'm drawing a blank on the term, but basically here are everything that we stand for, and
guiding principles.
Exactly, they're guiding principles, but they can actually hire and fire based upon those principles. If you're not fitting in, you may have gotten hired, but if you're not fitting in based on those principles, you're gone, right? So because they're really taking a strong stand on what the business stands for.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think that, and you've hit on another thing. There's the purpose piece, but then what you're talking about now is, shared values, and
mm-hmm.
having. I think for anyone, being clear on what your individual values are is important, because to the degree that we operate within or are able to honor those key values in what we do, we're fulfilled, and then that translates on a larger scale to collective, shared values. If you're talking about veterinary practice, to the degree that there's clarity around what those are, like you're talking about with Zappos, and then there's kind of an intentional focus on those things. You use that for selection. You use that as a basis for making decisions. Use those guiding principles to as a tool to create a mutual accountability, so that any team member, if someone is violating one of those principles, can go to that person and say, hey, one of our shared principles is whatever, and there can be that mutual accountability that comes about. But I think from a balance and from a health standpoint, which is important from what the angle you're coming from,
right?
Knowing what someone's values are or what the team's values are, and then making efforts to be aligned with those are pretty crucial, because if we're not aligned, we're not going to be healthy. We're going to be unhappy. We're going to struggle. We're going to have stress.
Right.
All those things.
Yep. And we talked a little bit about that when we were at dinner over pizza in Chicago as well. It was kind of, how do we take all these concepts of, if somebody lays it all out during the day and then they go home and they yell and scream at their wife and kids, or their husband and kids, or whoever it may be, they're this professional person during the day, and then whenever they get home, and they're a completely different person, what values and what changes do we have going on there? Is it a result of the stress? Is it a result of, the culture you have at work? Is it a result of, are you trying to get away from everything at home and you go to work and, there's so many things there, and it's like we have to start looking at all these different pieces, and it's not usually any one thing, and we need to start bringing them, kind of lifting them all up.
Yeah. What I'm thinking of as you're talking is the idea of self-care, and my experience in both veterinary medicine and care is that oftentimes, caregivers spend so much time taking care of the client or the patient that they have nothing left for their team members, or certainly for their family or for themselves. So that idea of really looking at that piece is important as well. What's going to allow me to be able to provide the care that I like to provide, but not to the point where I have nothing left for myself or for those that are close to me.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's kind of that approach for us of, okay, helping figure out from a nutritional standpoint. Are you eating things that are bringing you down? Do you know how to handle the stress? Are you sleeping well? All these things, then they sit you into a spiral, and then they all just feed on each other. And then you go and you're like, okay, I've left everything at work, and then I'm done. I'm mentally done. And then, unfortunately, this profession is one where has become quite known that there's a high suicide and depression rate and everything else that goes along with that. And it's a shame, because these are extremely gifted people, as well as, highly driven people, and they just don't know how to cope with all the different aspects of it.
Yeah. What's coming up for me is there's an opportunity. I think this isn't just veterinary medicine. I think any business is to expand the dialogue, expand the conversation around these things that we tend to not talk about for whatever reason. But have some kind of a regular process at a team meeting, or if teams are doing daily huddles where there's some kind of a it's not just about the work, but there's some content, or there's some discussion about the process. How are we doing? Doing the work. How are people doing mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally? And those are not typical things that we are comfortable talking about sometimes. But
right.
That some kind of a intention around that. It doesn't have to be a big deal. I know I remember one example from a practice owner. It was just a weekly thing. Every Monday, she would. Now I'm not going to remember the questions, but they were basically a couple. They kind of bring the team together before they launched into the week, and it was. I think one of them was, "How was your weekend?" And then another one was just something around, "How are you doing?" Or basically some simple check-in questions that how can we support you best this week, or something like that. That allowed everyone to just kind of say, "Hey, I had a great weekend," or "I had a really tough weekend, and here to help me make it through the week." So everyone, was aware of that, and that helped with their process. So something in the conversation that focuses on, how are we working together? How are we honoring our values? How are we supporting each other? How's each person doing individually? Can be an important practice to consider building into, the weekly or the monthly processes for the practice.
Right. So with that kind of leads me to thinking, even how do we, there's a lot of veterinary students that are out there now. So there's more and more that are coming through. We've got the schools are pretty well packed. How do we kind of create this culture for them within the school? And I think one of the things that I like is the VLE that you all do, and what you all do for many of the students there. But how can we even expand that even more? Or let's talk about VLE first. So let's go down that line. That's because that's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that other question.
Yeah.
VLE is, I think all that we've talked about is in alignment with the principles of the VLE. The idea of servant leadership, which is more about a distributed approach to leadership. It's not the heroic or paternalistic approaches that we're all used to, and then certainly emotional intelligence and being clear on values and operating in alignment with those values are all key parts of that program. So, it's really a nice way for students that may not, have been on the fast track to getting into vet school, and that competitive, if I get in, someone else is not going to get in. They've been in that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I think the principle there of the VLE is it's a week kind of off the grid. I mean, not totally. I mean, they still have internet access and stuff, but
Right.
kind of away from your regular routine. You're on the banks of the Spokane River. There's that idea of stepping back and reflecting and taking that time to think about, what do I want for my life? What do I want for my career? Where am I now related to that? And, what's going to be important for me to honor going forward. So those principles, I think, to answer you, the original question you threw out there, that something, around that idea of how can we build in more of those opportunities for self-reflection and goal setting, or, setting priorities, or thinking through what's really important. And, how do I make sure and be consistent in focusing on those things.
Right. And I think that's a really cool program. Knowing Jen as she's gone through several of these since I've known her, has been just seeing the excitement of what she experiences each time, and knowing the experience that all the participants get to go through too. So it's a really, really cool program, and it's something that I think probably every school in some way needs to expand upon. But, so otherwise, people are still going to run into the burnout. There's always going to be people that run into burnout in any profession, and obviously in the same thing with the veterinarians. But, how do we get them to think again from that different paradigm?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and so translating that, then that's the challenge that the VLE's had. Is it's a great experience and a great opportunity for people to kind of say, here's how I've been operating. Here's how I'd like to operate going forward. But being able to sustain that beyond that experience is always been a challenge, and it's a challenge for all of us really because we get on the treadmill of life, and so somewhere in there have to be kind of regular stops where you get off and slow down and take stock, and
gotta slow down so you can speed back up.
Right.
Yeah, it's that. Definitely, I can relate to that. I've known lots of people, from me as a performance coach, dealing with people that are those driven people that may be executives at businesses, and they, and then they're training for an Ironman, and it's like they're giving up, 20 to 30 hours of their week on top of their business, taking it away from their family so that they can accomplish this huge goal that they have.
Yeah.
So it's, it reminds me a lot of an overlap into what goes on in this profession. So, well, cool. So one of the things I know that you do is you do some writing for the Vet Team Brief, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sally Stamp, my colleague, and I have co-written a fair number of articles. We did a series on positivity and happiness last year, and we're doing a couple of different ones this year.
Very cool. So if people are interested in kind of going down this path of the gifted leaders, the leadership, how can they become working better within their practice? So whether they're a practice owner or an associate within a practice, how can they kind of, get in contact with you? What can they do as far as, learning a little bit more about the Gifted Leaders program and contacting you? How do they go about that?
Well, certainly, the website, giftedleaders.com would be a starting place. I would, first thing that came to mind is we do a monthly newsletter, and it's basically, one of us will find an article out there that someone's written. We'll kind of do a little crib notes version of that. What are the highlights of the article? Provide a link to the article, But all the articles really support kind of where we're coming from, which is the idea of, leadership is not it's a together thing. It's not something that resides in the individual person. It's ideally something that is a function of the team or a function of the organization, and the goal is to bring that out and to kind of bring the leader out in everyone. So that's another key piece, is that we really subscribe to the idea, and that's kind of where this idea of gifted leaders started, was the idea of everyone has a unique gift to offer, and how do you then combine those gifts to create leadership? And how does then that leadership, which leadership is really about moving, it's about change, it's about moving from point A to point B. So those monthly newsletters really kind of support all that philosophy of, each of us can influence. We need to know what our gifts are, and then we can positively influence whatever system we're part of.
Right. Yep.
By offering those gifts. So that would be a great place to start. If people have some interest in professional coaching, leadership coaching, we'd be happy to, set up just a little half-hour call, no obligation, no fee, just kind of a free informational call, or, here's how coaching works. Here's how, we can help you establish some goals and then move forward towards those goals. But coaching services can be a great way for people to, do some of that self-assessment and reflection, and then establish goals, and then figure out what they need to do differently to move towards those goals. And those goals could be around performance. They could be around getting better at what you do. They oftentimes, though, are around things we've been talking about, learning and the fulfillment. How can I achieve more balance? I think if I reflect back on the coaching engagements that I've been part of, a lot of the conversations kind of come back to, how can I show up and be at my best as a person, as a leader, but also as a person.
Right. Well, very cool. So, I'll definitely have that information, how they can contact you, in the show notes. Actually, just kind of reminded me of a Simon Sinek quote that I saw yesterday. I get his daily emails, and the quote was, "As a leader, we are not responsible for the results. As a leader, we are responsible for the people who are responsible for the results." So if we think about that from that, whether it be a practice owner, practice manager, whatever it is, it's not just us. We don't make all the results. We have to help all the team that helps the results, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is it's not that distributed leadership is a free for all, because the positional leader does have the responsibility of essentially convening the team, engaging the team, and having those conversations that are about what results are we trying to create and how are we doing in making that happen. So you're absolutely right.
Yep. Well, great. Well, Dr. Jeff Thoren, I appreciate you being on the show. I appreciate everybody that's listening to the show, and we really appreciate the feedback that we get from who we're bringing on the show, and we want more of that. So you can always head over to iTunes and leave us some show notes, or some notes on the show and some comments, as well as rate us over there. But let us know on our website, HighPerf, HIGHPERF, living, LIVING.com, and you can let us know there what you think about the podcast and who you would like also to bring on. But Jeff, I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you at one of the next conferences that we'll be at, and we'll continuing our dialogue as well.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at High Performance Vet Pro Radio. We hope to hear from you soon. Like this episode? Leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. It helps us to reach more veterinary professionals. For more information or to contact us, please visit us at highperfliving.com. Until next time, remember to live every day with intention.